Bill Mazer on Whitney Radio, 1460 WVOX. Now, here's the amazing...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our guest, Dan Schorr, has been a successful prosecutor of some of the most dangerous criminal defendants in Westchester. I guess you were an assistant DA, weren't you?
Yes, I was, and it's great to be on your show. I've been listening and watching you since I was a little kid, so it's a thrill to be on with you.
I know. You're probably about 5 years old when you first heard.
Dan, I remember watching you answer the sports trivia questions on Channel 5 when I was a kid, and it's great to be on with you now.
Dan, where'd you go to college?
I went to the University of Pennsylvania and then Harvard Law School, and then became a prosecutor right after that.
You went to Harvard Law School.
Right.
You were turned down at Michigan?
Yes.
Dan, when is the election procedure going to take place?
This year is the election. On November 3rd, 2009, Westchester will elect a district attorney. So I've been campaigning all around the county. I was a prosecutor first in the Queens DA's office, then in Westchester, although I lived in White Plains the whole time.
Dan, if I say Sam Leibowitz, do you know the name?
The name sounds familiar, but I cannot place who that is.
I would have stumped you, right?
Yes.
When I was a young kid, Sam Leibowitz was an attorney, a criminal attorney, a defendant. And he won more cases in a row than Joe DiMaggio got base hits. And as I grew up, I never thought much about it, but I just thought about it now. I don't think I've ever seen a score kept on district attorney wins another one, has won 40 in a row. Is that what really counts in the decision a voter has to make? Dan,
well, it really does. That's not what counts, and that's one of the problems we have right now in the DA's office, that people are too concerned about getting convictions, and it stops them from prosecuting the tough cases. For instance, I was a prosecutor of domestic violence, sex crimes, and child abuse, and those are tough cases to win. You often have victims that are afraid to testify. They are economically dependent on their abusers. They need counseling services, and it's not the kind of case where you just knock it down conviction after conviction after conviction. You really need to work with people, and there's become this obsession with stats now by the current administration where they'll take easy plea bargains just to get a win when they're not trying harder to really get the help for the victims and to put people in jail longer. The measures, though, that do count for the DA's office are the crime statistics, because then you can really see if they're doing a good job. And the latest statistics from New York State show that Westchester, the murder rate has gone up 10%, while it's fallen by 13% statewide. And rapes have gone up 8.4%, while it's fallen by 7.7% statewide. So those are the more meaningful statistics. You know, anyone could get a quick conviction, but you really need to get to the root of the problem and know who to prosecute, how to prosecute them, and work with the victims.
I've never heard it explained like a medical problem before.
Well, you know, their cases are complicated. If someone confesses to a crime, anyone can convict that person, but it takes a well-trained office with good prosecutors to really go after the difficult crimes, the complicated crimes.
Like what? What complicated crimes?
Well, I was talking about domestic violence before. It's not as easy. You know, if you're mugged on the street, you'll go to the police and report it, and if they catch the person, you'll probably testify. But if you have a woman who is a victim of domestic violence, maybe she's beaten for years by a boyfriend or a husband and is terrified about coming to court and is afraid that if he does go to jail, she'll have no one to financially support her. And she may not speak English well. She may not have job training and education. And it's complicated to work with a victim like that and get them prepared to testify and also help them beyond the testimony. The case doesn't end with the conviction, but you need to really work with people to get them on a good footing for the rest of their lives. And that's true with sex crimes, with child abuse, Another complicated crime that's very different is identity theft. More and more you hear about people's credit card identities being stolen, or online people may put in information and their identities are stolen. And Westchester right now does not have a uniform way of dealing with identity theft crimes. And it's been a major problem that a lot of police officers have told me about, that when they have a case of identity theft, the DA's office doesn't have a uniform way of addressing it and working with it. They don't have a bureau focusing on that. So these are the type of things that I want to initiate.
You know, it's strange that you mentioned that. I came to New York in 1964 and decided the best way, I was working at NBC at the time, was to go in by train, not drive in. And one day, not too long after I'd gotten here, I was walking and I saw a guy whack a woman, really hit her. And I stopped. I was going to grab him. I swear to you, no baloney. But I didn't do it. And I felt guilty about it. And when I got into work the next day, I told my compadres at NBC about what happened. I said, damn it, I should have stopped it. They said, no, stupid. You made the right move. Because if you had stepped in, they both would have beaten you up. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think if you can, people should intervene to protect people. You know, I've talked to many police officers who have intervened, and the victim has been upset with them later on. I think one reason for that is that victims are scared about what will happen if the abuser is removed from their lives, because people are financially dependent, emotionally dependent, and it's tough in domestic violence prosecutions because often you do have victims who don't want to cooperate. But an important part of domestic violence prosecution is that even if that particular woman does not want the defendant prosecuted, that defendant most likely will go on to another relationship where he will be abusive to somebody else. So you need to intervene and prosecute, and many often times incarcerate that defendant so he doesn't hurt another person later on, even if that particular victim is not going to be appreciative of it.
You've given a hell of an answer.
Well, I've prosecuted hundreds of domestic violence cases, and this is my calling as a prosecutor.
Well, the reason I say it is that for years, why didn't Hillary divorce him? Why didn't she? This is a country that doesn't believe really in divorce and yet has 50% divorces. But why didn't Hillary divorce him? And you know what I used to say? Why don't women who get their butts beat up by a man divorce him? And you just gave an answer. Because they're afraid of the consequences that might follow. Am I wrong in what I react?
No, you're right. People are very afraid. I mean, imagine you get married, let's say at a young age to someone, or you're dating someone at a young age, and you don't have job training, you don't have a job of your own, you may not be educated, and you're financially dependent on somebody. You have children, and you don't. If you're abused, first of all, you're scared about what will happen if you try to leave. Will the abuser hurt you more? If you are on your own, how are you going to protect financially your children and yourself? And just emotionally, this is the person that you may have been with for a long time and is a major part of your life. So it's a really tough situation. That's why a lot of counties in New York have what's called a family justice center, where they bring a lot of services in one location, centralized, where the victim of domestic violence gets counseling, gets help with immigration issues, gets language training if they don't speak English very well. And Westchester, unfortunately, does not have this. Queens has it, Brooklyn has it, the Bronx is starting it. And it's something that we need in Westchester, too, a centralized place for counseling and support for victims so that they can move on with their lives, and we can punish and protect we could punish the defendants and protect the victims.
Dan, on a personal level, why did you go into prosecution rather than defense?
I went to law school to become a prosecutor. I always thought it was the best job that I could think of. the most important role of government is to keep us safe. The government has to do other things too, but the most important thing is to keep us safe, which is what a prosecutor gets to do. You work with crime victims, and not only do you prosecute guilty people, but you also have a lot of power to help wrongly accused people. You could do more to help an innocent person as a prosecutor than you can as the best defense attorney in the world. I've had cases where arrests were made and I dismissed the charges because I thought the person was not guilty. And even the best defense attorney in the world doesn't have that ability where they can just dismiss a case if they think the person is innocent. So you really can do a lot of good as a prosecutor.
Hey, listen, it was good talking to you.
Thank you. It was a thrill to be on your show.
Thank you. Good luck. Dan Schorr, Schorr.